And the third clip for today is from Bryan Fischer, who says President Obama wishes he could arrest World War II veterans and throw them in jail. This was in the aftermath of the entire World War II memorial government shutdown kerfuffle, where a bunch of Republicans started pandering to the flag-waving constituency by showing up, and Michelle Bachmann, rather, putting her arms around a World War II vet, and they're all so friendly, even though this is their shutdown. Take a look at what Bryan Fischer had to say.
I think the reality is, as much as President Obama would like to arrest these vets, haul them off to jail, handcuff them to a cot, I mean, I think he'd be absolutely fine doing that. He realizes that politically there's no possible way he could do that. The American public simply would not stand for it. So they've had to find some way to let this go on.
Yeah, I have a real problem with this one because it just doesn't really make sense, but it actually fits into a worldview that many right-wingers seem to be taking on in spite of its total disconnection from reality, which is that somehow President Obama is not, it's the same thing, Lewis, where it's Democrats are weak on national defense and mean to former troops and current troops, where we've found time after time after time that the real way to support the troops is, number one, don't send them into pointless wars that don't make sense. Number two, fully fund their healthcare benefits when they come back. And number three, just putting a magnet ribbon on the back of your car does not mean you are supporting the troops. And this is not the Democratic problem. This is the problem on the right.
It is, yeah. And it's strange to hear Bryan Fischer talk about something other than gays. And I would have assumed he would have been, I don't know, praising veterans and saying something like the memorial should be open. But I guess you never know what to expect from Bryan Fischer when he's not talking about gays.
Well, it's become fairly obvious to me that everything Bryan Fischer claims President Obama wants to do to conservatives is actually what Bryan Fischer would like to do to liberals. So that if we simply make that small but significant adjustment when we interpret the statements made by Bryan Fischer on his Focal Point program for the American Family Association, I think everything makes a lot more sense.
I think you're right there. We can agree on that.
Do you think that if we got all three of these individuals in the same room, right, Pat Robertson, Glenn Beck, and Bryan Fischer, would they agree with each other or disagree with each other more? Because remember what happened, Lewis, on this program, we invited the incredibly anti-gay Westboro Baptist Church, known for their God Hates Fag slogans, to be on alongside the incredibly anti-gay former Navy chaplain Gordon Klingenschmitt. They're both really anti-gay. They literally agreed on nothing. They agreed on nothing. They didn't agree on whether God does or doesn't hate gays. They didn't agree on whether exorcism is a valid way of so-called curing homosexuality. They didn't agree on anything. So sometimes when you get these extremists in the same room, they all have such a specific brand of extremism and conspiratorial thinking that it's completely incompatible with others who come to the same conclusions many times, but for drastically different reasons.
I think if these three were in the same room, the universe might implode on itself. We should try to avoid that. But in reality, I think they'd probably all just pretend to agree with each other, and there'd probably be three discussions going on at the same time.
I think what would be interesting would be for our next kind of debate like that, we should have Bryan Fischer on alongside Chaplain Gordon Klingenschmitt. We tried to get Westboro Church on with Bryan Fischer, and everybody was a go, except at the last minute, Bryan Fischer actually wrote to me privately, and he said, you know, David, I've been thinking about it. I don't want to do it. It's just going to become too much of a sideshow, which of course is accurate. But it's kind of interesting that Bryan Fischer had the common sense to realize that that's exactly what would happen and to bow out.
Yeah, that was probably the smartest move he's ever made.
All right, let's take a break. After the break, we will talk about the increased number of self-immolations that have been taking place, some bizarre ad timing on YouTube, as well as your voicemails. And on the bonus show, I will tell the story of how I was almost kicked out of a Catholic wedding reception over the weekend for stealing. It's one of the weirdest experiences I've had, probably one of the stranger stories for the bonus show.